There is a form of control so effective that the people trapped by it never realize they're being controlled. They wake up believing every decision they make is their own. They choose what to wear, what success looks like, what goals to chase, and even what kind of person they want to become. At least, that's what they believe. But what if I told you that many of those decisions were never entirely yours? Not because someone forced you, not because someone threatened you, but because the most powerful forms of manipulation don't rely on fear, they rely on influence. They quietly shape what you admire, what you fear, and what you desire until someone else's ideas begin to feel like your own. This isn't a conspiracy, it's human nature. For thousands of years, leaders, philosophers, merchants, and empires all understood the same principle. If you can influence what people want, you never have to force them to obey. They'll do it willingly, convinced they chose the path themselves. The Spartans understood this better than most. They believed the greatest threat to a warrior wasn't always an enemy standing across the battlefield. Sometimes it was the weakness growing inside his own mind. A man who could not control his attention, his emotions, or his desires could be defeated long before a sword was ever drawn. Today, the battlefield looks different, but the war hasn't changed. Every notification competes for your attention. Every advertisement tells you what success should look like. Every trend whispers who you're supposed to become. Most people never stop long enough to ask a simple question. Who benefits from the life I'm choosing? Because by the end of this video, you won't just understand how manipulation works. You'll understand why some people become almost impossible to manipulate, while millions of others spend their entire lives following paths they never truly chose. Chapter 1. The Invisible Chains. Imagine two prisoners. The first is locked inside a stone cell. Iron bars surround him, and every day he dreams about freedom. The second walks wherever he wants. He has a job, a phone, friends, and complete freedom to make his own decisions. Which one is truly free? Most people would answer the second without hesitation. But freedom isn't determined by where you can go. It's determined by who controls your decisions. If someone can influence what you value, what you fear, or what you spend your life chasing, they don't need chains anymore. The prison exists entirely inside your mind. This is why the most effective manipulation almost never feels like manipulation. It feels normal. Think about it. How many opinions do you hold because you carefully examined the evidence, and how many did you absorb simply because everyone around you believed the same thing? How many goals are truly yours, and how many were quietly handed to you by culture, advertising, or the people you admire? These questions are uncomfortable because they force us to consider something we rarely think about. We assume that because a thought appears inside our own mind, it must belong to us. That assumption is exactly what makes influence so powerful. Psychologists have spent decades studying something called social proof. When people are uncertain, they naturally look to others for guidance. Our ancestors survived because of it. Following the tribe often meant staying alive. But the same instinct that once protected us can also make us remarkably easy to influence. If everyone seems to want the same thing, we begin wanting it too. If everyone fears something, we start fearing it. If everyone praises a certain lifestyle, we slowly convince ourselves that it must be the right one. Notice how rarely anyone has to force those changes. The crowd does the work on its own. The Spartans trained against this instinct from an early age. Their goal wasn't to create men who ignored other people. Their goal was to create men who could think clearly even when everyone around them thought differently. They understood that courage wasn't only about facing an army, Sometimes courage meant standing alone when the crowd walked in the wrong direction. That lesson is just as important today. The world doesn't need to force you to waste your time if it can convince you that everyone else is wasting theirs too. It doesn't need to pressure you into lowering your standards if it can make mediocrity feel normal. That's how invisible chains are created. Not through violence, not through fear, but through the quiet belief that if enough people are doing something, it must be the right thing to do. And that leads to a far more important question. If the crowd is capable of shaping your decisions without you even realizing it, who is shaping the crowd? Chapter 2. The second chain. Attention. Every form of manipulation begins with the same question. How do I capture this person's attention? Because before someone can influence what you believe, they first have to influence what you notice. Think about your morning. Before you've even had time to think about your own goals, how many other voices have already entered your mind? A notification appears on your phone. A headline demands your attention. A video promises to change your life. One message turns into another, and before you've even started your day, someone else has already decided what your mind will focus on. Most people believe they're choosing what they consume. The reality is often the opposite. What repeatedly captures your attention eventually begins shaping your thoughts. Your thoughts shape your habits. Your habits shape your character. And over time, your character shapes your entire life. That's why attention is so valuable. It isn't just about what you're looking at. It's about who you're becoming while you're looking at it. This is why the modern world competes so aggressively for your focus. Every app wants one more minute. Every advertisement wants one more glance. Every platform is built around one goal. Keep your attention for just a little longer. Individually, these moments seem harmless. Collectively, they determine the direction of your life. The Spartans understood something remarkably simple. A warrior who could not control his attention would eventually lose control of everything else. In battle, looking in the wrong direction for even a moment could cost your life. Today, the consequences are different, but the principle hasn't changed. Every distraction carries a hidden cost, not because distractions are evil, but because every minute spent chasing what doesn't matter is a minute stolen from what does. The second invisible chain isn't wrapped around your hands, it's wrapped around your attention, and once someone controls your attention long enough, they begin influencing the person you become. Which brings us to the strongest chain of them all. Because attention may capture the mind, but emotion controls it. Chapter 3. The third chain. Emotion. Imagine trying to convince someone to make a decision while they're calm, patient, and thinking clearly. It's difficult. Now imagine trying to influence that same person while they're angry, afraid, jealous, or desperate. Everything changes. This is why manipulation rarely begins with logic. It begins with emotion. Fear tells you to act immediately. Anger tells you to stop listening. Envy convinces you someone else's life should have been yours. Pride whispers that you already know enough. Every strong emotion narrows your perspective until reacting feels easier than thinking. Look closely at the world around you, and you'll notice a pattern. The loudest voices are almost always the most emotional ones. Headlines are written to provoke outrage. Arguments are designed to divide people into sides. Social media rewards whatever creates the strongest reaction because emotional people click more, comment more, and share more. The goal isn't always to change your opinion. Sometimes it's simply to keep you reacting, because a person who is constantly reacting rarely has time to reflect. The Spartans trained for the opposite. On the battlefield, panic spread faster than arrows. One soldier losing control could cause an entire formation to collapse. They understood that discipline wasn't the absence of emotion. It was the ability to remain in command of yourself while emotion demanded otherwise. That lesson matters just as much today. The next time someone insults you, notice your first reaction. The next time a headline makes you angry, pause before accepting it. The next time fear tells you to make a decision immediately, ask yourself one simple question. Who benefits if I react instead of think? That single question has the power to interrupt manipulation before it takes control. Because the third invisible chain has never been fear, or anger, or pride. The chain is believing that every emotion deserves an immediate response. The moment you learn to pause, the chain begins to break. Chapter 4. Breaking the Chains. If you've made it this far, you've probably realized something uncomfortable. The greatest threat to your freedom was never another person. It was never a government, an algorithm, or a company. Those things can influence you, but they only succeed when you surrender something far more valuable: your ability to choose. Every chain we've talked about in this video depends on the same weakness. The chain of conformity depends on your fear of standing apart from the crowd. The chain of attention depends on your willingness to give your focus away without questioning whether it deserves to be there. The chain of emotion depends on your reactions becoming stronger than your principles. Break those three chains and something remarkable begins to happen. You become difficult to influence, not because you've stopped listening to other people, but because you've stopped allowing other people to think for you. The Spartans understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They believed discipline wasn't simply the ability to endure pain. It was the ability to remain loyal to your principles when comfort, fear, or approval tempted you to abandon them. A person who cannot be bribed by comfort, distracted by trends, or controlled by fear becomes incredibly difficult to manipulate. Think about how different your life would become if every important decision passed through three simple questions before you acted. Is this truly my belief, or did I inherit it from the crowd? Does this deserve my attention, or is someone competing to steal it? Am I responding with reason, or am I reacting through emotion? Those questions seem almost too simple, but simple questions have exposed some of history's greatest lies. Most people never pause long enough to ask them. Instead, they drift from one distraction to the next, one trend to another, and one emotional reaction after the next until years pass, and they can no longer explain why they're living the life they chose. A free mind is different. It doesn't reject every opinion, it examines them. It doesn't suppress emotion, it masters it. It doesn't follow the crowd simply because the crowd is moving. It first asks whether the crowd is walking towards something worth becoming. That is the beginning of real freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to decide why you want it in the first place. And once a person reaches that point, they become incredibly difficult to manipulate. Chapter 5. The Last Free Man. Imagine two versions of yourself standing side by side 10 years from now. The first spent every day reacting, chasing whatever demanded his attention, measuring his worth against strangers, following trends he never questioned, living according to expectations that were never truly his own. The second lived differently. He protected his attention as if it were his greatest possession. He questioned ideas before accepting them. He remained calm while others rushed to react. He built his life on principles instead of popularity. Both men were given the same amount of time. The only difference was who controlled their minds. That is the choice waiting for every person who watches this video. Manipulation is rarely obvious. It doesn't arrive wearing a mask. It arrives disguised as convenience, entertainment, comfort, and the overwhelming desire to fit in. It asks for only a few seconds of your attention, one emotional reaction, one compromise of your principles. Then it asks again tomorrow, and the day after that, until the person you could have become slowly disappears beneath thousands of decisions you never stopped to question. The Spartans left behind many lessons, but perhaps the greatest one wasn't about war at all. It was about self-mastery. They understood that the man who governs himself cannot be ruled by fear. He cannot be purchased by comfort. He cannot be controlled by the opinions of the crowd because his direction no longer depends on them. That is what the Spartan mindset has always represented. Not violence, not perfection, freedom. The kind of freedom that begins inside the mind long before anyone else can see it. So the next time the world tells you what to believe, pause. The next time fear demands an immediate decision, pause. The next time the crowd begins running in one direction, ask yourself whether they're running toward purpose or simply running together. Every time you choose awareness instead of impulse, every time you protect your attention, and every time you remain loyal to your principles instead of your emotions, another invisible chain falls away. One day you'll wake up and discover something extraordinary. The world is still trying to influence you. The distractions haven't disappeared. The opinions haven't stopped. The temptations are still there. But they no longer control you because you finally understand a truth that most people never will. The man who controls your mind never has to control your body. The day you reclaim your own mind is the day you become impossible to manipulate.